My name is Lin Hao, an ordinary city novice. My biggest love is to watch adventure films and fantasize that I can have a shocking adventure like the protagonist in the movie. But unexpectedly, this kind of opportunity really hit me. That day, I flipped through something in the building of my hometown and accidentally found a broken sheepskin paper with strange symbols and a bunch of incomprehensible lines on it. At that time, I thought it was the waste paper left by Yui, so I almost threw it away directly, but when I saw the words Lost Civilization Hunt written on the corner, my heart skipped a beat. Isn't this the hidden treasure picture in the publication? I found my childhood sweetheart Ma Xiaoya. This girl has grown up with me since she was a child. She has a lot of survival skills in the wild, and she can climb trees and catch fish. When she saw this picture, her eyes lit up. She patted her chest and said, "Hausi, if this is true, we will have to find it." The lost civilization that was so popular with the rainforest was full of gold and magical artifacts. How many adventure teams have gone there and never returned? Do you really dare to take a chance? I gritted my teeth and thought to myself, life will always be crazy, so I said it. That's it, we paid a little money, bought the equipment, and headed straight for the unblocked rainforest. I heard that this place is located in the edge of South America, and there is a lost civilization hidden deep in the forest. It is said that people thousands of years ago mastered the mysterious power and left countless treasures. However, at the same time, they also issued traps and curses, and most of the people who came in could not come. But I have a clear mind because I have an unknown secret. I will never forget it after reading it. As long as I have seen things, maps, lines, symbols, and the stats, I can remember clearly every detail on this hidden treasure map. As soon as we arrived at the town surrounded by the forest, we felt a disagreeable atmosphere. This place is simply the distribution center for explorers. The streets are full of people carrying large and small bags. They look tight, and there are many people in groups of 3 or 5, discussing something in a low voice. Xiaoya and I got off the car, and before we could catch our breath, we heard a harsh laughter coming from the side. "Yeah, aren't these 2 little brats? Why are you here in this family?" Dahan, wearing a camouflage uniform and full of stubble, left, and followed by a few subordinates who were dressed in the same way. He had a smoke in his mouth, his eyes were full of disdain. I could tell at a glance that this guy is probably not a good bird. Xiaoya sniffed her eyebrows and said to me in a low voice, "This person is called Zhang Kuang. She is the most famous explorer in this forest. She has many people under her command and has ruthless methods. I heard that many teams have been cheated by him." I was a little bit, but there were already a lot in my heart. Zhang Kuang approached, looked at us up and down, spitting a smoke circle in his mouth, and sneered, "You are just such a broken piece of equipment, and you still want to go into the forest to find a treasure trove? Don't tease it, a vegetable bird, you have to feed the wolf in less than half a day. Let's take you home and drink milk as soon as possible, don't take a look here." The few subordinates behind him also burst into laughter, and the sound was so harsh that it made people angry. I clenched my fists, and a fire broke out in my heart, but I still held it back, and replied with a smile, "Captain Zhang, right? Thank you for your concern, but you won't worry about our affairs." "Who is Baozan?" "It depends on your ability, it's not enough to say it." Xiaoya quietly pulled me next to me and signaled me not to be too tough, but I just couldn't swallow this breath. After Zhang Kuang finished listening, his face darkened, and his eyes were filled with dissatisfaction, but he quickly laughed again, clapped his hands and said, "Okay, boy, his mouth is quite hard. Then I want to see, what ability do you have to live in this forest for 3 days? Brothers, let's go and see." After speaking, he swung his big hand and took his subordinates away, leaving behind a loud laugh. I looked at their backs, biting my teeth tightly, and secretly swore in my heart, "Zhang Kuang, wait, why do you laugh at me today? How will I make you cry another day?" That night, Xiaoya and I sank a simple camping place around the forest, and planned to set off at dawn. I took out the hidden treasure and carefully studied it with the light of the flashlight. The picture shows a dense forest with a strange mark in the center, like an inverted triangle, and there are several lines of incomprehensible symbols next to it. I closed my eyes and quickly flew back to every detail on the picture, trying to find the trace in the picture. "Howsy, can you understand this broken picture?" Xiaoya asked in confusion after coming over. I clicked the head and said lightly, "Don't worry, I have some idea. This inverted triangle should be a certain landmark, and the symbol next to it may be a direction or distance prompt. We should follow the general direction on the diagram tomorrow and we should be able to find the first line." Xiaoya was half believing, but she still said, "Okay, I believe in you anyway. But this forest is not something you can play with. There are so many poisonous snakes and wild animals, so we have to be careful." I patted her on the shoulder and said with a smile, "With you here, what am I afraid of?" The next morning, we packed up our equipment and officially stepped into this hot rainforest. Not long after I went in, I felt what the ground turret mode was called. The air is as hot as a steamer. The body is covered in sweat without a single moment. There are mud and vines under the feet. You have to be careful without taking a few steps, otherwise you will have to fall and eat shit if you step on the feet. Not to mention the strange birds that come from time to time around, and the rustling sounds in the trees, which makes people's skin numb. Xiaoya walked in front, holding a mountain knife in her hand, constantly cutting off the vines that were slashing the way, and reminding me to pay attention to the foot. Her skills are indeed not good. If she weren't there, I would have been lost. We walked in the general direction on the Tibetan map for most of the day, and finally came to a relatively high area, surrounded by large trees, and the sunlight could hardly penetrate, making it very radiant. I stopped, took out the hidden treasure picture and compared it, and murmured, "It should be nearby. Is that inverted triangle a shape of a tree?" I looked up and saw that there was indeed a giant tree not far ahead. The main fork formed an inverted triangle, exactly the same as the one on the picture. "Finished!" I shouted in a low voice, so excited that I almost jumped up. Xiaoya also followed her and said in surprise, "You really guessed it. Howsy, how did you grow up with this brain?" I smiled and didn't explain much. After all, no one believed it when I said it. But just as we were about to get close to the tree, a sound of walking suddenly came from behind, followed by the familiar and whispering voice, "Can Squid Bird really let you go so far? But this place is not something you can come." When I turned around, it was indeed Zhang Kuang, who walked towards us with his subordinates all over his face. I sneered, stood up straight and said, "Captain Zhang, why do you have you everywhere? This forest is not yours, so you still have to agree wherever you want to go?" Zhang Kuang's face froze, but soon regained his expression of beating and hummed, "Boy, don't be stubborn. Do you think you found a broken tree and found a treasure? Make a dream. I have been here for a long time, there is nothing, you are just in vain. Is that right?" I raised my eyebrows, my heart already had a clear idea. Zhang Kuang clearly followed us, probably because we were a little bit away and wanted to get the cheapest we achieved. But he didn't know that the hidden treasure map information in my brain had long remembered the details around this tree clearly. The markings on the picture are not only the shape of the tree, but also a hidden symbol near the tree roots, indicating the real entrance. I ignored it and walked straight to the giant tree, lowered my head and looked at the soil around the tree roots. Sure enough, under a pile of vines, there was a stone slab with symbols exactly like those on the Tibetan treasure map. My heart beat faster, and my head turned to wink at Xiaoya, then lifted the stone slab hard, and a dark hole was revealed below, and I could still hear the sound coming from it. What is this?" Xiaoya's eyes widened, and she was so surprised that she couldn't speak. I grinned, turned to Zhang Kuang, and said slowly, "Captain Zhang, aren't you saying there is nothing here? Why, does your face hurt now?" Zhang Kuang's face turned blue in an instant, and he couldn't speak in his mouth. The subordinates next to him were also shocked. It was obvious that I didn't expect that I could find an entrance for Kai Bird in the whole country. Zhang Kuang, the guy, walked towards us with his subordinates all over his face. I sneered, stood up straight and said, "Captain Zhang, why do you have you everywhere? This forest is not yours, so you still have to agree wherever you want to go?" Zhang Kuang's face froze, but soon regained his expression of beating and hummed, "Boy, don't be stubborn. Do you think you found a broken tree and found a treasure? Make a dream. I have been here for a long time, there is nothing, you are just in vain. Is that right? I raised my eyebrows, my heart already had a clear idea. Zhang Kuang clearly followed us, probably because we were a little bit away and wanted to get the cheapest we achieved. But he didn't know that the hidden treasure map information in my brain had long remembered the details around this tree clearly. The markings on the picture are not only the shape of the tree, but also a hidden symbol near the tree roots, indicating the real entrance. I ignored it and walked straight to the giant tree, lowered my head and looked at the soil around the tree roots. Sure enough, under a pile of vines, there was a stone slab with symbols exactly like those on the Tibetan treasure map. My heart beat faster, and my head turned to wink at Xiaoya, then lifted the stone slab hard, and a dark hole was revealed below, and I could still hear the sound coming from it. What is this? Xiaoya's eyes widened, and she was so surprised that she couldn't speak. I grinned, turned to Zhang Kuang, and said slowly, Captain Zhang, aren't you saying there is nothing here? Why, does your face hurt now? Zhang Kuang's face turned blue in an instant, and hesitated and couldn't speak. The subordinates next to him were also shocked. It was obvious that I didn't expect that a vegetable bird could find such an entrance. He gritted his teeth and stared at me, growling, Boy, don't be too proud too early, you will feel good after you come in. I was very proud and said indifferently, then try it. Who are you afraid of? After saying that, I turned around and said in a low voice to Xiaoya, prepare your phone and cables, let's go down and take a look. But at this moment, a deep forest suddenly came a low roar, like a sound from some large wilderness, which made the leaves around them tremble. When Xiaoya and I met each other, my heart felt a little angry. The dangers in this forest were not only traps and questions, but also those unknown creatures were watching us. I took a deep breath, held the opening knife in my hand, and looked at the dark hole. My heart was both tight and excited. The real adventure has just begun now. I stood in front of the dark hole, my palms were covered in sweat, and my ears were still roaring that low voice just now. It is fake to say that being unhappy is false, but more so it is still exciting. There is a big secret hidden in this place at a glance. The hidden treasures in my brain have begun to emerge. Here is definitely the first step toward the lost civilization. Hausi, don't be stunned. We have to go on, who knows what that roar is, don't wait for it to come. Xiaoya's voice pulled me back to reality. She had already taken out a flashlight and rope from her backpack, and acted quickly like a professional exploring housekeeper. I clicked the head, took the phone, glanced at Zhang Kuang, and saw that they were still talking about private words far away, with a faint sense of good intention in my eyes. Humph, what can you do? Anyway, I've already gone out of this first step. I muttered in a low voice, then with Xiaoya, he rode the rope on the tree beside him, and prepared to go down the hole. The entrance of the cave was so dark that he couldn't see his 5 fingers. After the electric light was pressed down, he could only illuminate a small area. There seemed to be a slope below, and it was hard to see clearly how deep it was. I gritted my teeth and grabbed the slid down first. When my feet stepped on the ground, I felt a swarm of a squid blowing from deeper, with a strange fishy smell. Be careful, this place is not simple. Xiaoya followed and reminded me in a low voice that the ridge in her hand was already tightly grasped. I clicked the head and took a photo with my phone. I found that this place looked like a naturally formed underground passage. The walls were covered with moss, and the foot was so slid that it was so heavy that it would slip if I didn't pay attention. We walked along the passage, the air became more and more damp, and the sound of water drops falling to the ground was constantly transmitted to our ears, ticking, making people's skin numb. After walking for a few steps, I suddenly felt a little uneven under my feet. When I looked down, I saw that the ground was covered with black snails with fists, densely packed with sticky liquid on my body, which made me feel very frightened. Collection, what's this thing? I couldn't help but whisper, almost jumping up. Xiaoya grabbed me and said in a low voice, don't be irritated. This is a poisonous centipede. It can make people feel numb and burp severely. Follow me and slowly roll over. She took out a small bottle from her backpack, and some liquid was installed in it. She blew around us, saying that it could drive away. I watched her operate, and couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. "Xiaoya, you're so skillful, it's just a mobile encyclopedia." She gave me a blank look and said unhappily, "Don't be polite, go quickly, these stingers won't wait for you to chat." We carefully traverse the poisonous area and continue to move forward, but the deeper we go, the more we feel unfavorable we feel. The atmosphere in this passage is too strange, and some blurry marks begin to appear on the wall, like some ancient symbols, which are a bit similar to those on the Tibetan treasure map, but are not exactly the same. I stopped, closed my eyes, and quickly flew back to the details of the hidden treasure map, trying to find the traces in the picture. "Haozi, what are you doing? Don't be stupid." Xiaoya pushed me, and then I came back to my senses and said, "It's okay, I'm thinking about the meaning of these symbols. There seems to be something on the picture, but you have to think about it again." As I was speaking, a click sounded suddenly under my feet. I lowered my head and stepped on a loose stone slab. The whole person lost weight in an instant and fell into a deep pit next to me. "Haozi!" Xiaoya screamed in surprise and reached out to pull me, but it was too late. I just felt my body falling down quickly, and my brain was blank. "It's over, I really need to explain this." But at this moment, the rope around my waist suddenly tightened and hung me up, not falling to the bottom. I looked down and saw that it was pitch black below, and I could see a bunch of spikes, and it almost turned into a human string. "Pull me up!" I shouted. Xiaoya gritted her teeth and pulled me back. I lay on the ground, my heart pounding, my head was covered in cold sweat, and I gasped and said, "Why are all traps in this broken place? I almost died." Xiaoya was also scared and stared at me and said, "You can't walk long. This place looks weird at first glance, so I can keep a little care under my feet." I smiled bitterly, got up and patted the soil on my body, and said, Okay, I'll hear you." But just that, I seemed to see something flashing at the bottom of the pit. "Flash?" Xiaoya looked over and took a photo with her hand. Sure enough, there was a strange symbol engraved on the head of a small stone in the middle of the pit, and a green gem was embedded around it, emitting a faint light. My eyes lit up, and the hidden treasures in my brain instantly met the details. This symbol is exactly the same as the position of the machine marked on the picture. "This is a switch," I said in a low voice, and then let Xiaoya help fix the ropes. I went down carefully to avoid the spikes, and finally touched the stone. There was indeed a groove on it that could be pressed down. I took a deep breath, pressed hard, and only heard the sound of resurrection. A piece of silk was open on the wall next to me, revealing a new passage. "Awesome, Haozi, how do you know?" Xiaoya looked at me in surprise. I grinned and said, "I remember every detail on this picture. I just flashed my head and got on. Let's go in and take a look." We walked into the new passage, and the air inside was even colder. The walls were full of carvings, paintings that I couldn't understand, like a group of people worshipping some huge creature. But before I could study it carefully, a sound of footsteps suddenly came from behind, and then the sound of Zhang Kuang's whispering, "Hey, Shaokai bird, you ran quite fast. Have you found the machine here?" "Okay, there are 2 times." I looked back and found that this guy followed him with his subordinates, with a smile on his face that he was owed a beating. "Captain Zhang, it's fun for everyone else at the end, right?" I sneered and stood up straight, not afraid of him. Zhang Kuang snorted and said, "Stop talking, you can't swallow the treasures here. Know about it, hand over the ropes you know, otherwise you will feel better. Take it? Make a dream." I gritted my teeth and replied, and my mind had already started to calculate the solutions. There are many more facilities here, and there are many people in Zhang Kuang. It is definitely not possible to be tough, but if you want to be wise, I am not afraid of him. I quickly recalled the details of the treasure map in my brain, and suddenly I remembered that there was a fake channel marked on the map, and there was also a warning symbol next to it, which probably was a trap. My eyes turned and I deliberately put on a tight look, saying, "Okay, if you want to know the thread, I'll tell you." There is a hidden passage turning right in front, and the first hidden passage is inside. You can get it yourself. Zhang Kuang heard it and his eyes lit up. Lima greeted his subordinates, go, and take it, you're still aware of it. After saying that, they couldn't wait to rush towards the passage on the right. I looked at their backs and couldn't help but snoring. Xiaoya came over and asked in a low voice, Haozi, have you really told them? I smiled and said, tell me, that passage is fake. There is a warning on the picture. Go in and specify that there is no good fruit to eat. Let's go to the left, the real threat is here. Xiaoya looked at me with admiration and said, how long is your brain so long? It's so bubbling. I listened to my shoulders and didn't explain much, so I pulled her towards the passage on the left. As expected, it took not long before the passage on the right, a clamor and a spell sound came from the passage, which made me feel happy. Zhang Kuang, that's just the beginning, and you will suffer later. The passage on the left was getting narrower and narrower, and the air was filled with a sense of old smell. The walls were carvings more and more. I took a photo with my hand and found that these carvings were telling the story of a history of a civilization. People in the picture worshipped a huge stone statue, and there was a circle of strange runes engraved on the head of the stone statue. My heart beat faster because these runes are exactly the same as those on the Tibetan pictures. This is the first secret of lost civilization. I said softly, then took out the small notebook I carried, copied down the runes one by one, and flew in my brain to remember every detail. Although these runes are not understood, they are marked on the picture as some kind of password, and when unpacked, they can point to the real treasure entrance. Haozi, can you understand these ghost talismans? Xiaoya came over and was full of curiosity. I rammed my head, it's not possible now, but there is a hint on the picture that it should be something in a sequence or corresponding order. Go back and study it slowly. The most important thing now is that we have to find the next landmark first. As he was speaking, a huge stone door suddenly appeared in the passage, with a huge beast carved on it, a gem in his mouth, and two luminous crystals embedded in his eyes, which looked very powerful. The hidden treasures in my brain appeared again, and behind this stone door, the road to the deepest point. Xiaoya and I looked at each other, and a desire aroused in our hearts. No matter what danger or madness he is, Baozong is right in front of him, who doesn't want to stop me? But just as I was about to study how the stone door opened, a rapid sound of footsteps came from behind, and Zhang Kuang's voice sounded again, boy, you dare to fool me. Let's calculate this account slowly. I turned around and saw that this guy was covered in mud and his body was covered in mud. He obviously had just eaten the big shot in the fake passage. He rushed towards us with his subordinates, his eyes full of anger. I felt nervous and thought it was not good. The space here was narrow and there was no place to run. I had to deal with it now. I stood in front of the stone gate, my heart beating like a drum beat, and I quickly recalled every detail on the hidden treasure map, trying to find the thread to open the door. But the guy Zhang Kuang came over with a popular atmosphere, full of anger on his face, and his mouth was still sneering, boy, if you dare to play tricks on me, believe it or not, I will wipe you out now. I sneered and turned to him, and said nothing, Captain Zhang, aren't you still pretty good? Why did you start to scatter after eating? I won't tell you about your tricks. Before I start to move, think about whether I have that brain to unlock the secret behind this door. I deliberately pointed to the stone door behind me, with my eyes full of ticks. Zhang Kuang's face was blue and he stared at me, gritted his teeth. Several subordinates next to him were also ready to move, as if he was preparing to move at any time. Xiaoya quietly pulled the corner of my clothes and said in a low voice, Haozi, don't be too tough. We have few people, so we have to fight for food. I ordered ahead, and I had an idea in my mind. It's not possible to be hard, but I'm not afraid of being smart. I remember clearly the details on the hidden treasure map. The runes on this stone door are definitely the key to interpretation. Okay, Captain Zhang, before you start, you can also look at it. There are runes on this door. Do you know how to solve it? I deliberately put on a kind look, pointed to the runes carved on the stone door and said, this thing can't be opened by just a few clicks. Maybe the touching machine will be closed, so we have to finish it all. Otherwise, you try it first?" Zhang Kuang heard me that there was a slight rumbling in his eyes. Obviously, he also knew that there were many machines in this place, so he just ate in the fake passage, and now he was a little scared. He hummed and said with a hard head, "Stop talking, I have a lot of people, how many times have I tried to make a mistake, are you afraid that you won't be able to open? But you, don't act like this model, believe it or not, I will just send you up and let you tell me all the traces. Trouble me? Okay, try it." I was very proud, and on the surface I didn't care, but my brain had already started flying in fast. I have long known the rune traces on the hidden treasure map. These runes should be arranged in a certain order. The rune circle on the head of the giant beast on the door is the password to unlock the machine. The picture prompts that the order must be from left to right, and in turn, the positions of the giant eyes, mouth and claws. I quietly retreated to Xiaoya and said in a low voice, "Help me hold them down for a few minutes, and I will untie this door." Xiaoya pointed at the head, stood in front of me without saying a word, and said to Zhang Kuang, "Captain Zhang, your person just fell into a trap in the fake passage. Are you still face-threatening us now? If you have the ability, you can explain it yourself. Don't always want to get rid of what you have done." Zhang Kuang was agitated by Xiaoya's words, and his face became even more difficult to watch. Lima pointed at us and said, "Little girl's head, her mouth is quite hard. Brothers, come on to me and clean them up first." Lima, a few subordinates, came over, and Xiaoya was not vague. She slapped the mountain knife in her hand and directly slapped one's attack. She took out a wolf-proof spray with the other hand, and sprayed wildly against the other guy. I took advantage of this terrible empty file and turned around and started studying the stone gate. There are 12 symbols on the rune circle on the door, and there is a groove in the eyes, mouth and claws of the giant beast, which is exactly the order of the hidden treasure. I closed my eyes, passed the details on the picture again in my brain, took a deep breath, and began to press the runes in order. The first one, the third rune corresponding to the left eye, was pressed, and the stone door shook slightly, but it didn't open. My heart was nervous, but I didn't stop. I continued to press the 7th rune corresponding to my mouth, and there was another click sound, and this vibration became even more obvious. Finally, there was the 10th rune that corresponded to the paws. I pressed it hard, and the entire stone door suddenly sounded a low sound, which opened towards the inner side, and a cold breath came over my face. "It's done!" I shouted lowly, and when I turned around, Xiaoya was still having sex with Zhang Kuang's subordinates. Although she was not injured, it was obviously a bit difficult. I rushed over, grabbed her and shouted, "Xiaoya, go, the door is open." She heard my voice, and she opened the opponent's attack from one side, and followed me into the stone door. Zhang Kuang saw this and was so angry that he was very angry. "Boy, don't run." He wanted to chase after him with the person, but after the stone door opened, a deep sound of the machine suddenly came from it, and then countless small arrows shot out from the walls on both sides of the door, which was so fast that the naked eye could not see clearly. Xiaoya and I fell down just after coming in and reluctantly dodged, but Zhang Kuang did not react. Several subordinates were shot directly and fell down with a cry. The rest of us were also scared to crawl back. "Both slot, what's this ghost connection?" Zhang Kuang's voice came from outside, full of shock and anger. I lay on the ground, panting heavily, and turned to Xiaoya. "It seems that the machine switch will automatically start as soon as this door is opened. Fortunately, we came in first." Xiaoya wiped her sweat and smiled bitterly. "Fortunately you can relieve it quickly, otherwise we will have to become a thorn." I got up, turned on my phone and looked around, and found that this place looked like a huge underground hall, with stone tiles on the ground, and walls around it were carved with wall paintings, painting a civilized glorious scene. There was also a huge sacrificial fortress in the center, with a golden stone slab emitting a faint light. My heart beat faster. This stone slab is obviously not an ordinary thing. The final treasure tagged on the treasure map should be related to this thing. But before I could get close to the fort, Zhang Kuang's voice came from the door. Boy, do you think it's over to hide in? Tell you that the treasures here belong to mine, who shouldn't try to snatch them. I looked back and saw that this guy was not giving up and forced himself in with the rest of the people, completely ignoring the dangers of the mechanism. They just stepped into the hall, and the ground suddenly raised. Several stone bricks collapsed, revealing a pile of spikes. Two subordinates fell down directly, and shouted back to the hall, making people's head numb. Zhang Kuang, are you having a pit in your brain? There are so many things here, and you are still tough, don't you think you're too lucky? I couldn't help but laugh, standing next to the fort, looking at him with disdain. Zhang Kuang's face was hard to see the point, and gritted his teeth and said, "Stop talking, I have so many people. What's the point of losing a few? But you can't escape now." After saying that, he swung his hand and a few of his subordinates, Lima, rushed towards me and Xiaoya. I felt nervous. Although this big hall is big, there are not many places to hide, so it is definitely not possible to fight hard. As my brain flew quickly, I suddenly remembered that there was also a hint on the picture of the Tibetan treasure. There was a hidden machine near the sacrificial supreme that could be used to counter the enemy. "Xiaoya, hold them down for a few seconds," I said softly, then quickly ran to the fort and carefully observed the stone bricks around me. Sure enough, there was an inconspicuous small groove on the left side of the sacrificial syllable with a symbol like the one on the Tibetan treasure map. I pressed it without hesitation, and only heard a click sound. The wall behind the fort suddenly opened, revealing a row of crossbow arrow devices, and the arrow pointed directly to Zhang Kuang. "Go!" I yelled, pulled the pull rod next to the groove hard, and the crossbow arrow shot out swoosh, with a shocking speed. Zhang Kuang's subordinates did not react at all, and two more people were shot and fell down directly. Zhang Kuang fell to the ground in surprise and shouted in surprise, "Stop, stop quickly." I sneered, stopped to pull the rod, and said slowly, "Captain Zhang, why, is it so good to have such an incident? Didn't you say that you were too many people? How many are there left now?" Zhang Kuang got up, covered in frowns, staring at me with gritted teeth, but he obviously didn't dare to act rashly anymore. After all, there were only two people left on him, and he couldn't force himself. "Boy, you are ruthless. I have remembered this note, let's take a look." He said a ruthless sentence, retreated to the edge of the hall with only the remaining subordinates, and did not dare to approach again at the moment. I let out a breath and turned my head to Xiaoya. "This guy has calmed down. Let's see what this stone slab is." Xiaoya clicked the head, walked to the fortress, and studied the golden stone slab with me. The surface of the stone slab is full of dense runes, and a red gem is embedded in the center, emitting a strange light. I closed my eyes and quickly recalled the details of the treasure map in my brain. I found that these runes were exactly the same as the ultimate password on the picture, and should be pointing to the treasure's true secret. "Howsy, this thing looks insignificant, like a certain energy source," Xiaoya said softly, her fingers touching the stone slabs, but at this moment, the entire hall suddenly shook violently. The stone slabs in the center of the sacrificial straits, and the wall paintings on the wall seemed to be alive, making a low roar. I was shocked and said in my heart that it was not good. Could it be that I had touched something amazing? "Get back quickly." I grabbed Xiaoya and ran towards the hall. But without running a few steps, the ground behind the fort suddenly cracked and a huge figure rose slowly. It was a giant stone carving, exactly the same as the one carved on the stone door, but now it seemed to be injected with life, with red light flashing in its eyes, and a deafening roar in its mouth, and rolling towards us. "Both trough, what's this?" I couldn't help but swear, my heart almost jumped into my throat. Xiaoya was also surprised to have her face turn pale, but she quickly took out her slash and said in a low voice, "Howsy, this should be the ultimate guardian of Baozan. We have to find a way to kill it, otherwise we will not be able to get Baozan." I bit my teeth and flew to the bush, and tried to find the trace from the hidden treasure map. But the giant beast was too fast. Once its huge claws were swept, a big pit was smashed out of the ground, and the gravel flew, forcing Xiaoya and I to climb and hide. Zhang Kuang was not easy to pass, so he was just watching the scene. Now he was also affected by the attack of the giant beast, and he was so scared that he hugged the rat. Haozi, think about it quickly. If this continues, we will all be done. Xiaoya shouted, and after hiding the huge beast, she looked at me anxiously. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and desperately recalled every detail of the hidden treasures in my brain. Suddenly, a vague prompt appeared, and the last page on the picture mentioned that the Guardian's weakness is at its core, which is a crystal at the chest. Finished. I suddenly opened my eyes, pointed to the red crystal on the giant's chest, and shouted, Xiaoya, aim for that place to fight. Only by shattering it can you stop this monster. Xiaoya pointed at the head, gritted her teeth and rushed over, and the mountain knife in her hand slashed at the crystal, but the giant swung her tail and directly slapped her and threw it heavily to the ground. Xiaoya. I felt nervous and could not see the danger. I rushed over and helped her up. I saw that the corners of her mouth were bleeding and her face was pale, but I still said hard, I'm fine, go quickly, don't worry about me. I bit my teeth and watched the giant beast come over again, anger ignited in my heart. No matter what kind of guardian it is, if we don't kill it today, who shouldn't want to live? I grabbed a piece of sharp gravel on the ground, looked at the crystal on the giant beast's chest, threw it over with all my strength, and heard a bang sound, and a fine crack broke on the surface of the crystal. The giant beast let out a painful roar, and its movements obviously slowed down. My eyes lit up and I thought there was something, but before I could continue to attack, the giant beast suddenly turned around, his bloody eyes stared at me, and Zhang Kai's mouth swept towards me. I saw the bloody mouth of the giant beast coming towards me, and my heart was almost jumping out of my chest, but my brain was extremely awake. You can't hide, and you can't do it. The only way is to seize the weakness of the crystal on its chest and give it a fatal blow. I bit my teeth and glanced at a cracked iron spear scattered on the ground. It should be the crossbow arrow shot from the previous one. I couldn't think too much, so I suddenly snatched the iron spear, turned to the crystal on the giant beast's chest and stabbed it with all my strength. Break it for me! I yelled, and the tip of the iron spear pierced hard into the crystal crack. I heard a crisp sound of click. The red crystal finally exploded and broke into pieces. The giant beast let out a roar that shook the sky, and its body suddenly froze, then it fell down as if it had lost its power, smashed the ground and slammed the soil, and the entire hall was shaken. I gasped and sat on the ground, covered in cold sweat. My iron spear was still in my hand, and my palms were numb. When I looked back, Xiaoya was rushing up and showed me a tough smile. Haozi, you did a pretty job. I thought we really wanted to explain this. I grinned, got up and held her, and said, how could I make you trouble with me? No matter how awesome this broken monster is, I have to kneel in front of me. As I said, I kicked the fallen giant beast, and felt a sense of pleasure. The just feeling of pressure and the tension between life and death have now become a joy of victory. But before we could catch our breath, Zhang Kuang's voice started to sound far away. Boy, okay, you have killed all the guards. But, you can't swallow the zodiac sign. I turned around and saw that the guy didn't run away, hiding in the corner with only one of the remaining subordinates, his eyes full of greed and unwillingness. They obviously wanted to wait until we fought with the giants to get the cheaper they had made. Zhang Kuang, your face is so thick. I sneered, stood up straight, and looked at him with disdain. I just saw that you were as scared as a dog. Now the monster has fallen and started to jump again? Why, didn't you say you were so crowded? Why are you the only one who is left now? Zhang Kuang was choked by my words, his face turned blue and white, and he gritted his teeth and growled, stop talking. I am sure to win the treasures in this place. Do you think it's all done to kill a monster? Tell you, I have the last move. After saying that, he took out a small remote control from his waist and pulled a cold smile out of the corner of his mouth. Do you know what this is? This is the explosives buried in the passage before I came in. Now, as long as I press it down, this big hall will collapse. Who should not want to hide it, and everyone will be finished together. I was shocked. I didn't expect that this guy would keep such a skill. He was indeed a ruthless character. Xiaoya also raised her eyebrows and said to me in a low voice, "Haozi, this guy doesn't seem to be a joke, we have to be careful." I clicked, and my brain flew and tried to find a solution. It's not enough to be hard, and no one can escape when the blowout drug is exploded. But Zhang Kuang is a greedy person and will definitely not really want to be as good as possible. I guess he just wants to force us. "Captain Zhang, are you frying medicine?" "Okay, you press it." I deliberately put on a look of no reason, and said to Feng Feng, "Anyway, Baozong is here. You have exploded, everyone will finish playing together, who should not take it away. But I have to remind you that once the frying medicine is over, this place collapses, and your reputation in the forest for those years has to be buried with you. What, are you willing?" Zhang Kuang heard me like this, and his fingers stopped on the remote control. His face was sunny, and it was obviously a pain point that I poked. He gritted his teeth and stared at me, his mouth low. "Boy, your mouth is so hard. Okay, I want to see if you have any skills to waste with me." As he said, he suddenly rushed towards me, took out a dagger in his hand, his eyes full of killing. I was ready to avoid his attack from one side, grabbed his wrist with the remote control, twisted it hard, and heard a click sound. His wrist directly staggered, and the remote control fell to the ground with a bang. I kicked the remote control with one foot, then punched him on the face. Zhang Kuang screamed, covered his nose and took a few steps back, his face covered in blood, and it looked like he was so stubborn. "Captain Zhang, how is it? Does it feel so good?" I sneered, stood up straight, and looked at him from a high place. "When I entered the forest, didn't you say I could not live for 3 days? How is it now? Who is lying here? Who is Baozong's? It depends on his ability. He doesn't rely on his mouth or his tricks." Zhang Kuang was lying on the ground, his face full of reluctance, and his mouth was still snatching. "Boy, you, don't be proud. I, Zhang Kuang, have been in this forest for so many years, and I have never seen any storm. I have remembered this account today." I hummed, ignored his ruthlessness, and turned around and said to Xiaoya, "Go and pick up the remote control to avoid such troubles." Xiaoya clicked the head, walked quickly over and picked up the remote control, and then checked it, and found that it was indeed a homemade fried medicine controller, which was very powerful. She turned her head and compared her hand to me, indicating that there was no problem. Only then did I relax my breath and turn to look at the golden stone slab on the fort, and a difficult-to-restrain excitement ignited in my heart. "Haozi, we finally reached the last step." Xiaoya walked to me, her eyes full of anticipation. I sniffed my head, took a deep breath, walked up to the fort, and carefully touched the golden stone slab. This time, no contact was made. Instead, the surface of the stone slab flashed, and the red gem in the center suddenly floated up, scattering in the air, emitting a gentle and powerful energy. The details of the Tibetan treasure in my brain are instantly matched. This treasure stone should be the core source of lost civilization. The last tip on the Tibetan treasure picture mentions that those who hold it will receive the inheritance of civilization and become the true king of Tibetan treasure. I reached out to catch the stone, and I felt a warm current flowing from my palm into my whole body. Suddenly there were many strange pictures in my brain, like an ancient memory, telling the rise and secrets of this civilization. "Haozi, what are you doing? Isn't that okay?" Xiaoya looked at me with a little inconsistent expression, and held me tightly, worried her face. I slammed my head and grinned and said, "It's okay, I just had something more in my brain, like the information left by this civilization." As he was speaking, the wall behind the fort suddenly opened with a bumping sound, revealing a passage leading to a deeper place. The passage could see a pile of golden light flashing things, and various ancient artifacts were piled up like mountains. Xiaoya and I met each other and knew in my heart that this was the real treasure. "Bog, Haozi, we really found Wuzhu to hide it." Xiaoya was so excited that her words were trembling, and she wanted to rush in by the arm. I smiled and grabbed her and said, "Don't worry, you can't run away. We have to deal with the matter behind first." As I said, I turned to Zhang Kuang, who was getting up while rushing up, with unwillingness in my eyes. "Captain Zhang, how are you? Do you still think I am not qualified to hide it? I walked up to him and said slowly, are you not very capable just now? How are you doing now? Do you think? Zhang Kuang gritted his teeth and saw the extreme. The remaining subordinate next to him was also lowered his head, and he didn't dare to show up. Boy, you're ruthless. I think I'm sorry. Zhang Kuang finally growled, lowered his head humiliatedly, and his voice was full of a grievance. I felt so happy. When I first entered the forest, he laughed at me, and now I am trampled under my feet. This feeling of reversal is so cool. Just remember, this forest is not a place where you can cover the sky with one hand. I snorted, ignored him, and pulled Xiaoya towards the passage of Baozang. The moment we stepped into the passage, the scene in front of us shocked me. Gold, stone, and ancient cultural relics filled the entire space. The light made people unable to open their eyes, and there were also some objects emitting mysterious atmosphere, as if they were holding some power. Howsy, we're really rich. Xiaoya's voice was shaking, her eyes staring at the treasures, her face full of disbelief. I grinned, patted her on the shoulder and said, it's not just about making money, we have also revealed the secret of lost civilization. This trip is worth it. In the next few hours, Xiaoya and I sorted out some of the treasures, picked out the most precious pieces and prepared to take them back. There are so many gold and gems that we can't get it all, so we can only record the position first, plan to turn back and then organize people to move it. As for the red gem, I always held it in my hand, and the civilization memory in my brain told me that this thing is not only the source of strength, but also protects the holder. It is simply a priceless treasure. A few days later, Xiaoya and I returned to the town beside the forest with the first batch of treasures. As soon as the news spread, the entire circle of exploration exploded. There were countless people surrounding us asking the east, with shock and admiration in our eyes. Those who looked down on us at the beginning now have closed their mouths, and some even took the initiative to get close to each other, saying that I have long seen that I am not an ordinary person. Howsy, have you heard that you have found the treasure of the lost civilization? Awesome, brother, if you have anything to help in the future, come to me anytime. An explorer who had been mingling with Zhang Kuang came over with a smile on his face. I glanced at him and said lightly, it's not necessary to help. Didn't you say that I couldn't live for 3 days? Why, have you changed your words now? The guy was choked by me and was embarrassed and hesitant and couldn't speak. The people around him also burst into laughter. I felt a little relieved in my heart. This feeling of facial hair was even more painful than finding Baozang. As for Zhang Kuang, since he learned about it in the hall that day, he left the forest in shame and heard that after returning to the town, he directly disbanded his team and could not find anyone. Some people say he is embarrassed to get involved in this circle again, while others say he is afraid that I will make a fortune with him. No matter what, this guy has fallen into a state of failure and can no longer show off his power in the exploration world. A few months later, Xiaoya and I used the income from our treasures to set up an exploration foundation, which not only protects the survival of the lost civilization, but also provides support to those young explorers with dreams. My name has finally been passed on and became the synonym for the king of forests wherever I go. People will mention the name Lin Hao, saying that I am a living legend. That night, Xiaoya and I sat in a small winery in the town, looking at the night view outside the window, each holding a glass of drink, feeling unspeakable. Howsy, these few months have passed like a dream. At first, I thought we went into the forest to save our lives, but I didn't expect that it would really make you turn over. Xiaoya smiled and slapped, her eyes filled with emotion. I grinned, put on the cup and touched her, and said, "Isn't you there anymore? Without you helping me, how could I get to this point alone? Come on, let's have a drink, and we have to go to a bigger world together in the future." Xiaoya was slightly lit, her eyes were flashing, and she smiled so hard. The night wind blew over, carrying the breath of a forest. I looked at the lights far away, and my heart was filled with satisfaction. From an ordinary novice leader to the current king of treasury, although the journey has been around, every step is worth it. The road ahead is still very long, but I know that as long as I have dreams, brothers and sisters and fight on my shoulders, I can cross any problem. From then on, the story of Lin Shandy has added a name called Lin Hao, and this adventure has also included the most rounded sentence.